Hi guys, here we are. Very excited to have Will with us. Will, tell us your name, a little bit about all the amazing things you've done.
Hi, I'm William Chase. Thank you, Marcus. Thanks for asking me. I'm so I don't know what I am really. Probably a farmer, farmer come food manufacturer brand maker. I started out as a potato farmer, turned my potato farming into making and producing Tyrrell's potato chips, and then we turned Tyrrell's into Chase Distillery, then turning our potatoes into gin and vodka, and now we've switched to cider apples, and we're making our cider apples into apple cider vinegar. So we're in the vinegar market now and enjoying it. So that's the space.
Happy day. And what time scale with the three sessions? How far back does Tyrrell's go?
It's a 20-year project so far. I was 30 years. I spent 10 years as a potato farmer, the early side of my life, with a lot of pain, the ups and downs, growing potatoes for supermarkets. The second 10-year chapter was working mainly for the specialty market, turning my potatoes and vegetables into Tyrrell's crisps. And then the last chapter was then distillery, building a distillery, trying to change the way people look at white spirits, prime for pedigree, the farm pedigree, into the making a superior product out of spirits. And now we're making vinegar and live, healthy, fermented probiotic foods as a sort of a condiment.
Mm-hmm. I did potato farming. I knew potato farmers down in Cornwall, and I used to harvest quite a lot in Norfolk, of all places. Used to help a guy. That was back when there were potato quotas, though.
I remember those.
That was a while ago. Right. Well, so good food is?
Good food to me is food with a story, with a pedigree, and it's made to taste. And good food is all about taste. And it's the experience of eating good food, firstly on taste, secondly on pedigree. If you know where it's come from and you know its full traceability and how it is, what's in it, that's good food to me.
Love it. What got you into the food industry other than farming?
What got me into the food industry was growing up on a farm, my mother cooking real live food, having proper 3 meals a day, real food. I remember going to visit other people when I was young, that would have sort of fry bentos, or they'd have spam, or they'd have bird's eye fish fingers. I was lucky enough, privileged enough to be brought up on a farm with a mother who knew all about the daily rituals of having proper breakfast, lunch, and high tea, and probably even dinner, maybe. So, and just local food that was all grown and made on the farm, nothing imported, or no ultra processed foods.
Right. That's interesting. I often say, because I farmed in Australia for 10 years and then was involved in farming when I got back. But you're right. The food it's next level. You know, it's hearty, it's filling. It's almost like you're eating out every day.
Exactly.
Nice. What was the high point and low point of your businesses so far?
Oh, good question. Many of them. I mean, obviously, I'm on my third chapter, and it's what I've learned. The high point, probably for me, was in my career in the last 30 years, was probably launching Tyrrell's, and after dealing with providing potatoes for supermarkets for 10 years, actually realizing there is a God and there is a life, and you can actually produce a product to the speciality, the independent world, where people did actually buy it on its pedigree and not just on its price and on its. So that was probably the real big uplifting in my life, was putting Tyrrell's on the shelves, and a brand that the phone started ringing and everybody wanted it because we made something to a quality, to a standard. That was probably the biggest high of my life, and taught me about food production, being a farmer, and branding. The lows of my life, obviously, was I actually tried to make it out as a farmer, and I failed miserably, and that was probably the lowest part of my life. I had many businesses that have probably not done very well, from a muck spreader hire business, from trying to hire muck spreaders to farmers, to all different sorts of crazy ideas. But the lows, probably the biggest lows, was probably that, and that's probably, I thought it was a big negative in my life, but in the end, it turned out to be a positive, because I think sometimes you have to realize the world when you're young is not flat, it is round, and it's got some sharp bits around the corners. And sometimes in life we need reminding where these are, and so you have to see it from the bad side to appreciate the good side. I'm a big believer.
But we said this on quite a few that I've done these. You know, it's all the experiences. It's almost the where it goes wrong that you get your biggest learnings.
I'd say the failure. We all learn from failure. Failure is great. As long as it doesn't happen too many times, because it's quite painful. But we all learn from failure. We all need failure to succeed.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating subject. Absolutely. Right. What one thing would you do differently if you could start over again?
Well, one thing, if I could start over again, in hindsight, we're talking now, which is fantastic. I would have probably done it the other way around. I wish I'd met the mother a lot earlier in my life, what I'm doing now with Willys. And if I'd met the benefits of healthy, sustainable farming, making a true product that actually does good, I probably would have done this 30 years ago instead of building a crisp factory and making tons and tons, frying thousands of tons of potatoes. I would have been happier fermenting live probiotic foods. And I learned so much more about the whole healthy food industry a lot earlier in my life than I'm at this age now. And I'm beginning to feel it, but I think I've still got a young inner age. I don't like talking about age. Healthy aging is now my biggest thing. Mm-hmm. So if I could have learned about this and started healthy aging at 30 instead of 60, I probably wish I hadn't done. So that's probably my biggest regret.
My mum's got a really interesting, not that it's nice to talk about, but she's got a really interesting line where she says she wants to die healthy, which I think is a really interesting concept. It's not one I've ever really thought about.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to, but then don't look at my Instagram. So there we go. Well, so what one bit of advice you're given at the start that you would disagree with, and one piece of advice that you would agree with?
My first bit of advice I disagree with is there is a book of rules. There are no rules in life. And if you can go into life building whatever you want to do, a career, there are laws. We do all have laws. We have laws you have to obey, but there are not, there's no rules. So I think my first thing is there are no rules. And I think taking this onto board, and you only can learn by experience. You can't learn by buying it. You have to physically learn it. So I think there are no rules. There are laws, and that's and you make your own. We live our life on experience. So if you've got to be in it to win it. You can't just sit at home and wait for your widget. You've got to get out there. I remember when I started Tyrrell's, there was no Google, so I wanted to build a crisp factory. But where do you buy it from? Where do you get your packaging? Where do you get flavors? Where do you host the process? How do you do it? Who can help you? So the only way in those days you could do it was to get out there and get on a plane and go and find some help and find somebody, or go to a library. A lot of people used to. Whereas today, especially with AI, it's done in no time, isn't it?
I know. Do you know what? It's funny. I was chatting to a chap this morning, actually, that's just opening up a shop. And I said, if I go back when I was working with Mum at Patchwork and we had to go and find some new customers in Stratford or Shropshire or Kent, you'd have to drive to the phone box, open up the yellow pages, rip the delicatessen page out of the yellow pages, and then that was your call sheet for that area, you know. Yeah. And I'm saying to people, I can't understand how in 2024 that you can't find, I mean, all these shops are just Google, you know. Back when
amazing. It's amazing. That is fascinating. I remember when I was a potato farmer, we used to go out a few miles away growing potatoes, and you'd have to go down to a phone box to go and sell your potatoes every day. If you knew that harvester was going to stick together and you were going to get some and it was dry enough to get them into bags, you'd have to drive down the road, get in the phone box, ring a few numbers, and then if there was a problem or you'd forgotten something, you had to drive back down there later again. That's incredible where people today can't move. They can't do it in a few seconds on this. I know. Incredible, isn't it?
I know. Well, I've got the benefit of both, you see, because I've come, you know, and I still do. And, you know, why the food club's the way it is because I'm still old and I'm very hands-on. You know, to me, communication is about talking and speaking and asking questions, whereas a lot of other companies have gone down the tech route and you lose that. Whereas for me, it's very natural to phone somebody up, whereas other people, it's more electronic communication.
Yes, exactly.
So I wasn't sure, was that a bit of good advice or disagreed advice? So which one did we cover?
That was, I think that was disagreed advice. The first thing, there are no rules. Sorry, I waffled about that one.
No, that's good.
That one again. There's no book of rules, and that's the bit of advice that was wrong. The good advice was to always start small. Do anything, have a go, but start small and try it. And to have a go. Don't ever spend your life regretting, I should have done this and I should have done that. No regrets. Have a go. If you fancy something, they say there's more entrepreneurs or whatever made in a downturn when people they've got no comfort zone. They haven't got anything to lose. So my advice to anybody is to go and have a go. And I'd say for receiving advice, the worst would be that there are rules, and the best advice would be start small and have a go, but look after the small customers. The best advice I had when I started was forget the big customers. And that's what I think had made Tyrrell such a success. Look after the small guys. I've got 3, I'm in my 3rd brand now that's growing and is getting larger. And as soon as the corporates come in, they all want to scale. Everybody wants to scale, and they want to be off sending pallets to the supermarkets. And they forget the little customer, the customer that wants to buy just one case. And never forget, I don't forget any customers I've dealt with and I've been lucky enough to deal with in the food industry. The smallest customer is more important to me than the biggest customer. And just quite simply because you don't want to lose anybody. They're like friends, customers to me. You can never do too much as customer service. So the best advice I've had is to love your customers, look after them, never do too much. Always talk to them, pick up, talk to them, but give them more respect, as much equal respect at least than the biggest customers.
No, that's fascinating. And I often say to food producers, have you ever phoned up a customer just to have a chat? Or are you only phoning up for orders or debt collecting? If you're only talking to your customers for 2 reasons, I don't get it. You've got time in the day, phone up a customer and just ask how it's going. How's things?
Exactly. Treat your customers as friends. Talk to them as friends. Don't say at our award-winning business. Just talk to them as friends. Just I think if you talk to people as a one-to-one and treat them with mutual respect, we share that, don't we? Because what I love about the independent specialty food business is these are all people with their own lives to deal with. I remember when I started Tyrrell's, I went to see somebody in Essex, and they had a shop, a deli. And I went in there with my boxes, and there was a rep in front of me, and she said, "You can F off." And I thought, wow, that's, do I go now? So I braved it up, and I saw her, and she said, sorry about that. So I gave her my box of crisps, and I said, "Look, I can see you having a bad day." She rang me later, and she said, "Do you know what?" She said, I really hate this business. Somebody's just been sick on the floor, and my spread hasn't turned up for the sandwiches, and I'm in here on my own trying to run this business. And I don't want reps just coming in selling me things. I want, so, and as I love you, Chris, and I'll sell them. And so that taught me about people. Business is people, and talking to people as a friend and not as an object or a target or by the book. And I think that's always resonated with me. So on the best advice is you can never do too much for your customers. Treat customers as friends.
Yeah.
And look after them.
But I've always said, I do a lot of sales training, and I try and help as many food producers as I can. But I say, if a customer phones up and they've got a problem, tell me one thing in your business that's more important that you need to do in that moment. And they can't, and I go, but if somebody's got a problem, I get a WhatsApp or an email, I stop doing everything and I deal with it, because there is not one other job in the food club that's more important than helping a customer that's got a problem.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, and people remember that.
Don't forget where you came from, isn't it? You need,
yes. Exactly. Right. So which food brand do you admire the most, and why?
There has to be one in my life in the food. From what I've learned as a farmer and I'm trying to be a brand and a food manufacturer, building food factories and all the work that goes with it, there has to be one clear winner, and for me that's Tabasco. Because it's a massive brand now, but it hasn't lost all of its original ethics. It's a farmer. It grows its own variety of chilies. They own on Avery Island the stories, the magic behind the brand. It hasn't lost. It's got a 100-year business plan. And for me, a brand, a business that can prove where its product is going to come from, with the rising waters and the things and the problems and things they have growing there, to a global brand. They've taken a tiny little idea all those years ago, and they've grown it into the world. And every self-respecting chef will have a Tabasco, and they'll respect it. It's not some chintzy new hot sauce that's got some magical peppers in it or something. It's so respected by every chef, every home, even every bar. If you buy a Bloody Mary, there's 90% chance it'll have a drop of Tabasco in it. It is just a phenomenal product. And I think of all the food brands, to have a sustainable something in the whole world, that's probably my most respected brand. Not just because they're just selling on Twee stores, they're selling it on the recipe, and they're farmers. They're growing the chilies. They are actually produced. They're not just outsourcing it and making up a few to each stores. They're growing it. So I think without doubt, that would be. And if I could in my life, if I could make a brand, that's my most respected. So that's what I want to try and do with Willie's. We've got there's apple cider vinegar, and if you can, a successful brand takes something and makes it better, and makes it better for its customers, and they give it more credibility. Hopefully for the vinegar world, that's what I want to do with Willie's, is I want to take what was a boring old vinegar, malt vinegar that's cheap, and you pour it on your chips. It's like Willie's on everything. For me, but it's difficult because it's a healthy product, and but it's to make vinegar sexy and exciting again by giving it the full pedigree and the story. And so that's sort of my sort of take on brands. But I think Tabasco definitely has to be the one I look at and buy the most. But I'd love any other thoughts on what you get from your other guys as well.
No, there's a few in there. Innocent's come up a few times, and a few brands sort of along like that. So yeah. It's good.
Yeah, but yeah, and for me, it's brands. It's like you mentioned one there that sells it by Nanny's knitting hats and twee stories and things. Whereas to me, I love the farmer. I've true food brand tells you where it's coming from. You're not buying something that's copied a sort of an ice cream brand on its stories. It's not some young guys that have come up with this clever idea that they're gonna. I think for me, a good food brand if you're paying a premium for something, it has to know where it comes from. You have to genuinely paying that money for it. And I think that's an interesting one with where people see what's a successful food brand and what can be around. We've got a 100-year business plan. And I love the fact that if you could build a business our orchards have been there for 300 years. The mother's been here for 300 years. If I could, build a brand with a 100-year business plan, because everybody's there just wants to build something, sell it, get rich quick, and sadly I've sold. If you had regrets in my life, would have been it's like selling your baby, chopping your arm off, almost selling something that is a brand. And so it's to produce something that's a household staple that's not a fad, I guess, isn't it? But actually can make people's lives better from having it as well. So I think if we can educate and I think this goes for all sorts of suppliers, even if you're making sourdough. So if you're fermenting sourdough, we got a local guy here, baker Peter Cook. He'd be a great one for you to talk to as well. He's a little local guy, and he can't keep up with demand now. And his best saying is that the customers are actually buying it because they are beginning to understand fermented bread. They don't want ultra processed foods. They want a local bread maker that makes real live fermented bread. So I think and you must come across these all over the country that are doing it because they love it and not because it's a job, isn't it?
Well, that's yeah. I mean, I think we could talk for hours on this subject, but I'm trying to sort of bring into the industry this idea of what you're talking about, which is long sustainable ownership of a business that actually generates an income and creates joy for the owner, rather than this sort of keep growing until you, bit like lemmings, just keep growing and running until you fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
But it's how far away the cliff is, because growing and doubling, quadrupling, and then doubling and quadrupling all the time, there does come a point where it sort of implodes on itself.
There is, and today you've got all sorts of funding, you've got different ways, but it can only, it's got to be sustainable. It won't last if it's not sustainable, is it? It has to be genuine, and I think if you look at all those genuine businesses, they do last, don't they? They will last, and they do. And it's like a good restaurant. A good restaurant, as you said, it's probably the hardest business of all to have. But they all rely on the passion, on the person that owns it, or people have tried it as chains and they don't work. Chains of restaurants don't work. They lose but that single one place that somebody puts their life and their passion into, and they believe, and they've got their signature dishes. They talk about their suppliers. It's a phenomenal place, isn't it? It's like I think the pig would be a good example. Robin Hudson, what he did with the pig, would be a great example of fantastic business model delivering, true pedigree and traceability on where the ingredients all come from.
But it is finding this sweet spot, you know, and I do believe, you know, a really successful restaurant, it's interesting you say that, but a really successful restaurant can be successful for 5, 10, 20 years. But
Yes.
if they start opening up more and more restaurants, the whole thing becomes diluted. But they had a sweet spot, you know, we spoke about the other day, you know, about finding that sweet spot and then plateauing really and just maintaining that as a business model.
Yes,
What
exactly.
were you saying about Tyrrell's the other day, wasn't it? About the 5 million.
Yeah, I think the sweet spot with Tyrrell's was before we built the big factory. We had a great little business. We got to, in our potato shed, we got to from start, I think within 3 or 4 years, we got from 0 to 5 million turnover. It was making 2.5 million net profit. It's making nearly 50, and this isn't EBIT or anything. This is like cash. And the phone was ringing all day, and it was amazing business. And did it need to? And there's always the question, you know, did it need to get bigger? It was just such a fantastic business. So I'm probably a hypocrite now, and it's a very good point to exactly what you were saying about it. If the older me could have visited me then, said no, just keep it as it is, keep it in this building, which was a potato shed, and it took us 6 months from the idea to get the potatoes out and get a factory in there. So the business gods and everything was on its side, and fantastic people worked in that business. A small team that loved it. There was no big structure. The wonderful thing about Tyrrell's, there was just a flat line. There was somebody that made it, somebody did the money, you know, and there's a lot of this model resonates through quite a lot of businesses. There's no hierarchy. It's just a simple line of business that people are all good and they all talk to each other. Yeah, that was always probably a question for me that I know there's no regrets and advice and ifs and buts and maybes, but yes, that was the sweet spot for Tyrrell's, was the original factory, maximum capacity, could only make what it made, and so sold every product on and didn't have to do any support, retros, discounts, anything like that. Didn't have to make white label, own label for other people, because that's another thing when you build a food factory, you have to make it busy. So you have to have your hands shackled and you have to start making stuff for nothing. You know, we get this now with Willys. We could grow 10 times faster if we started doing own label. I don't want to make own label. We make one brand, one product, and that's where it is. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. Every business in its life where its sweet spot is.
Yeah. But for many smaller producers,
for going for global domination, just organic growth versus solicited. There's probably more naughty words we could use for it, but I suppose organic versus solicited sales has to be the way to grow, doesn't it? This is what you're.
But I think there's a lot of food brands that actually at 80, 100, 200,000 pounds actually generate a really nice business for one owner or 1.5 people. And that business is sustainable for 5, 10 years, you know, and when you get to 400, 500, I've always said, there's a friend of mine, Rod from Rod and Ben Soups, and we've said, you sort of work really hard to get to 100,000, then you start losing money at 400,000, but then you start sort of making money again at 1 million, but you've almost got to go from 100,000 to 1 million. And I think a lot of food brands I've seen get to 500,000, and that's when the big problems start, because operating costs far exceed the margin that's coming in off the product until you get much bigger again.
Yes, exactly. And it's a reward for that risk, I suppose, for that work and effort and everything you put into it, and investment. And I think from out of what you said there as well, using those as examples, it's not cash, it's people's time, it's their life, it's that, you know, it's like our baker here, it's the amount of hours and hard work you have to put into it. Is anybody can go and have a clever idea. They're supposed to be the clever people that don't do anything, and you outsource it, you get somebody to make it, and you get some crowdfunding and shove it on the market and get people to believe, maybe put the odd celebrity, chuck that in as well with it as well, gives it a, but it's not a true authentic brand, is it? That's the interesting part is, and I think the other thing, like all these restaurants that are under a lot of pressure at the moment, is people doing it because it's come out of this. Is people doing it because they love it. They're doing it. It's their life, and it's not just the money. It's the fact they get up in the morning, they're singing in the shower. They want to go to work. They're enjoying life. You spend too much of your life at work not to enjoy it, and sort of everybody connected with it's enjoying it. And as you said, if you scale and you turn it into a miserable, you know, then it's not fun, is it? It's the fun's gone out of it.
That's really, I mean, I've got loads of buzz things that I say. been in for so long, but I say so often to people, is the business you think you want going to give you the job and lifestyle that you want?
Yes,
You know, and
exactly.
I say to, you know, if you're running a 4, 5, 10, 20 million pound business, what are you doing in that business day to day? You're nowhere near the kitchen. You've got investors, you've got board meetings. You know, it's a very stressful life. Whereas actually, at 150,000 turnover, you and one or two other people, you've got this really nice business with a lovely lifestyle balance, lovely work-life balance, and you're enjoying life for 10, 20 years.
Exactly. And they say, not being too methodical about it all, but they say it's not until you're in the winner's enclosure you realise the fun was in the race. And it sure is. The best time, you've spurred me to think about that. Probably the best time in my career was building Tyrrell's and that first original factory, because it was new, it was great. And we weren't experts. Nobody in the business was experts. We were just a bunch of guys from Herefordshire, you know, farmers and surrounding area that just got together and worked together as a team and made a product and enjoyed it. It was great fun in there. And it was great having the phone ringing all day and not something that's and you don't realize exactly, you know, that the fun is actually in the race. It's not, you never get there. We never get there. You know, people can sell businesses for whatever figures they like, but that's not where the fun is. The fun is every day getting up, reacting, loving customers, reacting with them, and always trying to improve, innovation, and always just trying to, enough is never good enough, is to try and make your product better. But that's a great point to mention there. And I think so many people in the food industry, because there are so many people in working for big corporate institutions that would love to get out of it, love to take the tie off, love to go and just become, you know, but then it's exactly as you said, the whole meaning behind this conversation now is the temptation, is the greed, is to get back on the treadmill, isn't it? And make it yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Man, that's awesome. That's so really, really interesting. Guilty food pleasure.
Oh, guilty food pleasure. Right. I suppose for me, all the things I've made and done outside of some very exciting wines would have to be probably vegetable chips. I think a beetroot, but something I'd never want to admit I really still like today, but is beetroot crisp, or perhaps even we made Parmesan parsnips, fresh parsnips with some grated Parmesan on them. Is yeah, and it's naughty, but it is incredibly.
I'm a huge fan of parsnip crisps.
The answer I probably should give you should be dark chocolate or something like that, but the real honesty would be yeah.
No, we had somebody the other day that was Cadbury's. They just love, yeah, they're little. They love to sneak off to the garage, buy some Cadbury's, and snuffle it in the car. But no,
Yeah,
big fan of
things like a chocolate digestive with a breakfast tea or something like that. It's not a herbal tea and dark chocolate, but it's a lot more fun.
You know what? I can eat anything, but dark chocolate's the only thing that I really find I just don't enjoy any part of it. I mean, if I'm doing judging at the Great Taste, I actually say I don't want to be, you know, I want to step aside on this one because I can't judge it properly. But yeah, but other people love dark chocolate, but yeah, just not one thing.
Exactly.
So what piece of advice would you give a food producer starting out?
I'd say anybody, if you love it, have a go and follow your heart and do what you enjoy. Do what you personally believe in, because it's not the money, it's doing something in your life. It's physically making something in your life. To me, it's not being with all the brands and everything I've done in the food and drink world. The thing that gives me more pleasure is just seeing my product on the shelves. Early days of Tyrrell's, we had the idea to do naked crisps. So we thought, how can we sell them as naked crisps? So we tried to put, without making it too naughty, tried to put these naked ladies on it. And I was in Fortnum Masons one day, and there's a little lady. She picked up a packet of Tyrrell's naked crisps, and then her husband had joined her at the till, and she had to get this packet out and show him these naked ladies on it. And she had a little chuckle, and I thought that was I was so impressed, inspired by that, because she picked the product up, not because somebody told her, but just because the packaging stood out and asked her to come and pick it up, and it made her laugh as well. And it was so I think yeah, that would be my take on that one.
But I always say the first purchase is with the eyes, the second purchase is with the mouth. But if you've not got something that somebody understands what it is, so many, don't start me on this one, so many food brands have gone like 80-90% logo and actually forget to tell people what they make. But if nobody picks it up and takes it home and eats it, it's going nowhere.
Or they won't come back and buy it again, because every single time it has to be the product. And from all the conversation we've had, if you take it back to my Tyrrells in the factory, it worked so well because it was the product, and letting people genuinely decide it's their product, it's for them, by giving them all the credentials, how it's made, where it came from, not holding anything back, no secrets, everything is totally transparent. That product is true, and it's and it's, yeah, I think that's the best sort of for me, for advice, is just do what you enjoy, follow your heart. If you enjoy it, even if it doesn't make any money, if you open a restaurant, you have a lot of fun doing it. What's wrong with that? It's I remember for me when I was 30, when things went bankrupt and I nearly lost my farm and everything, I thought I'd worked for 10 years in my life for nothing. Nobody's ever going to make any money in their 20s. My advice to anybody in their 20s is just go and get the experience, because the experience is worth more than, when you get to 30, the experience is worth far more than money. Experience, you can't buy experience, can you? And it's living that experience every day to how it fulfills you and fulfills your life. So yeah, I think my advice to anybody into it is don't worry about them. You do it because you enjoy it. And if you enjoy it and it feeds you, you'll soon work out a way to make it profitable. But if you don't like it and you hate it and you're not enjoying it, you're never going to make it. It's always going to be fake. If it's going to be true and you like it. And what better place in the world to be in food and drink? Is there any commodity, is there any industry that would be more fun to be, producing and making food products? I couldn't think of anything in the world. I would never change my life to be in any other industry than being a farmer, a manufacturer, and a brand of food. I love it. I think it's such, we've spent we've known each other for a long time now, probably 25 years, and it's
longer, I think, but yeah,
probably 30, is it? It's fantastic, and I've loved my time in the speciality and the sort of that food world has done more for me. All the directs and independent retailers on my list are still more important to me than anything. I can go, we know all the retailers, say in the UK, all the people that have. And it's a fantastic place. There's nowhere better to be.
But I think that's really interesting what you're saying, and this is the point I'm trying to sort of get across: is if your business can generate an income and it's manageable and you can enjoy it at this sweet spot, that's a really nice place to be with your business, and not sort of fall foul to this endless growth culture that just ends up causing problems, mental health problems, and all sorts of problems for producers, when actually, 12, 18 months into their business was actually a good business.
Exactly. And the podcasts and things I do now, when I get invited on, and thank you for inviting me with this, is I almost find talking about money now vulgar. I think I find it far more fun to talk about the reason why businesses are a success and how much fun people get out of them and what it does for life. Rather than, we've got this vulgar society now, we just talk about cash, how much things are worth, what do you sell it for? Because the other thing is, and a lot of people wouldn't admit this, but when you do sell a business, you don't really, you're capitalizing something that you never really sell it for its true value. Because, for me with Tyrrells, I laid all the, I had some really hardships there. I laid the concrete myself, most of the concrete all around the buildings. I designed the buildings, built all the buildings, bought every fryer and every bit of equipment and stuff in there. And it's more, money in your life will never replace that work of doing it, and the team, not just me, but all the team that worked in there. And so when I see businesses like say take Riverford with Guy, you can't fault that business to be a company-owned business, employee-owned company. Sorry, it's just beautiful, and you create such an amazing. It's giving something back, and I think that is probably one of the best food and drink models in the country. Would be Riverford by a million miles. There's lots of organic agencies that are buying in stuff and slapping their brand on it and sticking it in the market. But Riverford, you've got a guy up there himself, and he's championing for soil, you know, looking after soils, looking after soil microbiome, and supermarkets. You know, we could talk about this for all day. So look, what supermarkets, what's going on this Christmas, selling vegetables for 15 pence when the shelves a few months before were empty. And who's paying for those vegetables in the big discounters to go? You know, and what farmers are growing them, stupid enough to grow them, to give them to them for nothing, when a few months previous the shelves are empty. There's no stock. So it is totally out of balance. The whole food market is by this greed, I suppose, to try and go for growth and scale. And it has its price, doesn't it? It has it's not sustainable, is it? And what you're saying, all your small producers are actually sustainable. They're actually producing something where they can come into work every day if they're paying their bills and everything's working and people are paying them the true price for what they're making. It works, doesn't it?
Yep. So there's a lady down in Cornwall, Sarah and Finn, and Sarah makes 325 jars a week. She sells half into retail, half into farmers markets, and she makes the same amount every week. And she's done so for 10 years. And it generates the money that she needs with other blended incomes to enjoy the life, walks on the beaches, walks the dogs, and has a beautiful life, you know. But with no, and funny enough, there was a company wanted to order through her, and she said, I won't do it, you know, because it'll just upset my model. You know, it's a sustainable model that's the sweet spot. You know, it's this finding this sweet spot and enjoying. I haven't really thought about that, but it's the enjoying the business side of it.
And it does work. All those small independent food retailers to the producers, the good ones, your reputation goes in front of you, and the best ones are still all there, and they're still all trainers. There's some amazing farm shops and delis that just trade on their reputation, and restaurants that as long as the owner is in there loving it, enjoying it, and giving their customers, these are beautiful little businesses, aren't they? And it's and that was quite an interesting point you brought out earlier as well. It's like brands when they grow big. There's just nothing like Tabasco. There are very, very few brands that could keep going forever. Do you know what I mean? They own their production and they own the whole story. And you know that every bottle you buy will always be consistent and it'll carry the same story. They won't sell out. And it does happen, doesn't it? To brands that sell out and then suddenly the quality goes through the floor. The brand suddenly disappears and we never hear of it again. It's gone.
Without we could talk, I think I could talk forever. But also brands like Tabasco and the Srirachas and some of the UK brands, like you were saying, there was no Google. You know, these guys set brands up when there was very little information. Consumers nowadays, I mean, I remember when I used to sit and eat breakfast, we used to read the cereal packet. That was all we had to read. Dad had the newspaper and we had the back of the cereal packet, and you sort of wanted to eat the cereal quickly so you could get a new packet to read because that's all you had. Whereas everyone nowadays, to actually get seen in 2024 as a brand is really hard. You know, things were achieved 20, 30 years ago that I don't think.
How do we manage? How do people manage that? Because that's such an interesting point, because, you know, before we had that, you know, today, the biggest thing in my life, the biggest high in my life, again, as I was saying, was probably building Tyrrell's factory, to having a shed full of potatoes on October the 1st, 2021, and April the 1st, 2001 to 2002, 6 months, to go from an idea and a shed full of potatoes to a fully functional brand. I stopped and I asked myself today, how did you do that, William? How did you do that without Google, without any help? And it was just good people. It was just people off the farm around me, very simple thinking, solution finding.
Without Google.
And no Google to help. So today, you know, even if you've got a skin ailment or anything, you Google it, you can find anything. The answer is all in there, and especially with AI now, this is like times, but still, could you have an idea to have a brand and get it up and running in 6 months and on the market and working, not just getting it outsourced, but actually building the factory? Because I think one of my biggest handicaps I've had in my life, being a stupid sort of being a farmer about it, I think, is having to own the supply and build the factory. And to me, it's always very, very important that you've got something when you bring people in to show them around and show them what you're doing. And it's just so easy to outsource it, isn't it? And to stick it on the market and put a few twee stories with it. But it's I think it sells, and it's that small business. You'd rather have a small business making and in control of its own variables and in control of the whole story, rather than a massive business that's so dependent on, you know, we've seen that in COVID, haven't we? Companies that are so dependent on just in time, and you know, it's a weird space, but it is a very interesting space. How where the whole food market goes to from here to what people want from food. Do they want genuine stories, or will they keep buying, you know, because a restaurant would never work with stories, would it? A restaurant would only work with that chef that's in the kitchen that's creating those things.
Yeah. Oh. No, that's cool. What was I going to say? Giles from Olives Vital has got this really interesting thing where he talks about the DNA, you know, and so many food producers come in fast track, for want of a better word, never actually get the DNA of their business, you know, to actually feel it, experience it, grow it, build it, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I say the DNA to me is the magic. It's finding the magic. People think I'm a bit crazy when I'm talking about the magic, but it is. And the magic, I guess, is the DNA. It's the story, isn't it? It's when people pick something up off the shelf and they tell somebody else about it, where the magic is. And I think I could talk about all day. Like Tabasco's one. Another one that really does inspire me is Bob's Red Mill in America. And Bob's 94 now. Bob didn't start till he was 50. You go to Expo West in America, Bob will be there with his red hat cap on and his red jacket, and everybody want to go and shake Bob's hand and see him. And Bob didn't start till he was 54 or something. Most people I meet now at 54, they want to retire at 54, 60. Bob didn't start till then. So Bob's had, you know, he's had 30, 40 years of a lot of fun building Bob's steel cutouts. He's built a mill and he's done it all to make it. So yeah, in return to that, from what Giles is very true about his brand and the DNA of a brand. And I suppose that goes for everything, doesn't it? Where's the magic? To me, it's the magic. It's when somebody picks it up and they, you know, it's like I said about those naked chips, isn't it? It's when somebody picks something up from the packaging and they trust the brand. It's the DNA. It's the trust. True.
Well, I think, yes, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for asking me.
No, it's great. And yeah, well, we've known each other for a long time. So I was thinking back to our days in America and launching over there, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I've tried there many times. We just launched Willie's now in the States. It's going very, very well. Great. Sadly, Amazon is probably our biggest road into the market, but because they're very difficult, obviously Amazon. But it's an amazing place. America, as Frank said, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. I really did, even though Hershey's ended up owning Tyrrell's, I really struggled getting.
What do they say over there? Tyrrell's.
And then with the spirits, that again was so difficult trying to combat there. And it is such a massive place, isn't it? And the other thing interesting with that when we met out there was the culture, isn't it? You think when you first go to America, the Americans, I mean, they're nothing like us. It's a totally different culture in the way it's geared, isn't it? Amazing place.
Yeah, no, big thing. Brilliant. Will, thank you so much. You're amazing. Thank you so much, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you, Marcus. Great. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Okay, see you later.